Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 44 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we're discussing chapter 43 of A Game of Thrones. That's Eddard 11.
As always, we'll chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what's happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the TV show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide you with some extra information about the characters and places in this chapter. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Just like last week, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's my same response.
Every day is the same.
You have news.
Oh, yes, we've fostered a dog. The local, well, not pound, but like shelter was looking for people to take dogs off their hands. So we've got a dog for 2 weeks. He's 47 pounds and he's sweet natured. He's very handsome boy. He is handsome. My family are manipulative because they want a new dog and I don't. But I'm also got the biggest, softest heart. So
yes, you do.
I've already fallen in love with this dog.
I recall a time when you had 2 dogs and 2 cats and you said, there's no replacing these animals. As they go, they will not be replaced.
That was great thinking right there. That I should latch on to.
See how well you hold up to that, I guess. Now's the test.
He's very sweet. He's brindle coloured. I don't know if that word translates across the world, but like tiger striped. They call it brindle coloured here. And Carson has visited the Italian port city of Brindisi, so we've actually started calling him Brindisi, which shortens to Easy.
Easy, I like that.
Easy, yeah. And he's kind of cool and relaxed, so it's like a nice name for him. We've got all kinds of other things in the hopper. Compared
to Twiggy, he's easy.
Yeah, he is, no doubt. But he's also quite young. He's only like a year old. And, I mean, we don't know what he came from, but then he went to this shelter where there's like 50 dogs.
Yeah.
And then he's come to our house where there's like one other dog. And night 1, he just sacked out and fell asleep. Night 2, he howled in the night, like, oh. So it was
not so easy then.
No. Night 3, he was good again.
Huh.
But...
just had to get it out of his system, I guess.
Yeah. The thing is, these two, so they want this dog. Well, they don't. I'm not sure they want this dog, but they would love another dog. But I'm the one getting up with it. I was up at 5:50 this morning with that dog. I'm like, this ain't right. I'm the one who's walking him. I'm the one mopping up after him because he's not 100% house trained.
Oh, yes. Those are the same conversations that I had with my family before we got Penny. But yet, here she sits.
And everything came to pass as you predicted.
Oh, yes. The kids were all, I'll walk the dog and I'll take care of the dog. And Ethan has one job with this dog. Because he stays up so much later than the rest of us, his job is sometime before he goes to bed, he's got to take her outside, let her go potty one final time, and bring her back in. You would think he's being asked to scale a mountain. He's so...
Oh, yeah. Believe me, I would know. I would know exactly what you're talking about.
The problem is Penny's as sweet as she looks, and she looks incredibly sweet. It's really her one saving grace. She is so mean. So Penny usually, by the time Ethan goes to bed, Penny usually is in bed with Stacy and I in between us. And when he goes to pick her up, it sounds like a tiger and a lion clashing in a duel to the death. The snarling and growling that this dog
Does she
unleashes.
Bite?
Oh yeah, she chomps down on his hand. She doesn't bite hard. Like she doesn't bite to try and draw blood, but she will grab your hand pretty good. She's mean.
She's definitely got it in her, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. Anyway.
Well, let's get down to business. Quick recap of what Eddard was up to last time we saw him. Ned was abed, recovering from a broken leg he received at the hand of Jaime Lannister. Well, actually, at the hand of his own horse, but because of Jaime Lannister.
Right.
He dreamt of the long-ago fight for his sister at the Tower of Joy. When he woke, Robert reappointed him as Hand of the King, Ned took responsibility for Cat's capture of Tyrion. Robert ordered Tyrion's release before announcing that he was hightailing it out to go hunting and that Ned was in charge. Why don't we give them the summary?
All right. So Ned's sitting on the Iron Throne while the king is away hunting, as you just mentioned. The small council are seated below the throne, apart from Selmy and Renly, who have joined Robert on the hunt. The main business of the day is various traumatized villagers from the Riverlands describing atrocities committed by a large group of soldiers. While they wore no sigils, it's clear to all that they were Lannister-men.
The group of marauding soldiers were led by a man so large only one person in Westeros could fit the armour, Ser Gregor Clegane, the mountain that rides. 3 knights from the Riverlands accompany the small folk. They inform Ned that Edmure Tully has sent knights to defend every town and holdfast in the Riverlands. Ned realises that could be what Tywin Lannister wants, for Edmure to spread his armies thin, trying to protect small folk, leaving Riverrun vulnerable.
Peter Littlefinger Baelish asks the knights what they'd ask of the throne. They say Lord Huster Tully wants official leave from the crown to respond to the Lannisters in kind. Basically take the fight back to them for vengeance. Ned says it's not about vengeance, it's about justice. Ned offers to give that to the townsfolk, but since his leg is broken, he can't do it himself.
At this, Sir Loras Tyrell, the Knight of Flowers, offers to find Clegane and give him justice. Instead, Ned sends 3 knights, each with 20 men, plus 20 of his own men, to find Ser Gregor and bring him to justice. As the court adjourns, Lord Varys tells Ned that Ned's braver than he, pointing out that cutting both Loras Tyrell and the king's executioner, Sir Ilyn Payne, out of the action is a dangerous political move.
Yeah. Could have been 2 knights.
What?
The armor was so big that only 1 knight could fit. But what if it was like that horse costume where there's, one person in the back end of the horse and another person in the front end of the horse? Could
It's
have done
interesting.
that, like someone on someone else's shoulders, filling out the armor.
You know who it was? It's Bran and Rickon trying to blame the Lannisters.
That's right. Anyway.
All right, so what's going on? So is this the first? Is this the first scene we've had in the throne room of King's Landing, of the Red
I think
Keep?
so. Yeah, to my
about
memory, it is. I can't think of another one.
So the throne room gets a bit of a description. It's huge, and prior to Robert's reign, it was adorned with the enormous skulls of the dead dragons. We know they're not there anymore because Arya stumbled upon them while she was chasing cats, if you remember.
Yep.
They were moved out in favour of huge hunting tapestries by Robert. So I'm not sure aesthetically that's the right thing. I mean, I can kind of see he wants to distance himself from the Targaryens.
Sure. Yeah.
But there is a certain cachet in having dragon skulls adorning your throne room.
It certainly gives you some coolness factor points.
Yeah. I mean, hunting tapestries is nice. If you ever go to Versailles or anything like that, they have, really impressive hunting tapestries. But you know what? I don't remember taking any photos of said hunting tapestries. If there'd been a dragon skull, I would have...
There would be people lining up around the block to stick their head in the dragon's mouth to get their picture taken. Do that thing where it looks like they're holding it up.
I mean, yeah, he's missing out on a golden sort of marketing opportunity here. He could be selling tickets.
Why put him in the dungeon? At least put him somewhere where the small folk can pay like a copper or something for photo opportunity.
Could be like a whole like kiddie play park of dragon skulls. So it's Ned's first day on the Iron Throne.
Yeah, it's not exactly a lazy boy, is it? He refers to it as, if you remember, I think this happened back in the very first Ned chapter when they were in the crypt at Winterfell. Robert told him it was hellishly uncomfortable, and Ned is reminded of this as he is sitting in this hellishly uncomfortable chair.
and he curses 2 people for his rotten luck. One of them is Robert.
Yes.
For going off hunting and leaving him sitting in the chair. And the other was Aegon the Conqueror for building the chair in the first place.
Yeah. If you remember, in the Tyrion chapter where they were heading north from Winterfell to Castle Black, he was reading the book about the Field of Fire. I think it was about the Field of Fire. He was reading about, because one of his relatives was the king one of the kings that was on the wrong side of the field of fire. He was telling Jon about it. And we have mentioned in the background information that Balerion was involved. He provided the fire that made the throne.
Actually, while I was researching this chapter, I saw a painting of the Iron Throne. And this painting was just by a person who just painted it because they fancied the idea of painting this thing. And apparently George Martin said that he thought that was the best capturing of what he imagined the Iron Throne to look like. And it was much higher. It was very tall. It had steps running up to it. And it was much more sort of like random, swords were pointing out all over the place. Whereas the TV Game of Thrones throne was much more... It was much more like a chair, basically. Right,
yeah. You know, my copy that I read of A Game of Thrones is through Google Books or whatever.
Okay.
And it happens to be an illustrated copy. It's not like there's pictures all through it, but at the beginning and end of every chapter, there's pictures. Did it look like that?
It looked exactly like that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's very different than what it looks like on the TV show.
I mean, in that picture, the king is sitting there, but he's like tiny little, right in the middle of it.
Yeah, he's way up at the top there. Yeah, very different.
I didn't realize you had the picture book version. That's
I know. There's no words. It's just a bunch of pictures.
So, Varys, Littlefinger, Grand Maester Pycelle are in attendance, but the rest of the small council, that would be Renly Baratheon, the king's brother, and Barristan Selmy, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard?
Kingsguard, yep, you got it.
Yep. They're both on the hunt with Robert.
Yeah, as well as half the court, and including Prince Joffrey and the Hound. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, the Hound always goes where Joffrey is, isn't he, basically?
Right, he's his personal protector. But
enormous shadow.
When we get to talking about the other Clegane brother, I want to talk about how things might have gone differently had the Hound been in court today.
I look forward to it.
All right. So what we get, after he's done kind of complaining about the chair and mentioning who's here in the small council, there are a bunch of tattered and bloody villagers kneeling in front of him and 3 knights standing behind them. And the 3 knights are Sir Raymond Derry, Lord of Derry. We mentioned him back when Lady was killed. They were in Derry. That's where they were kind of holding up while they were hunting for Arya.
They were one of the last to come over from the Targaryen side, right? They were
yes.
the Targaryen loyalists. Yeah,
they were staunch Targaryen loyalists, and they lost a ton of land and wealth. And actually, Viserys, in the very first Dany chapter, when he was naming the houses that would rally to him if he ever got across the Narrow Sea with his Dothraki army, he mentions them as one of the houses that would come to him. Next, we've got Carl Vance, which in the audiobook, they refer to him as Carol Vance. So I think it looks like Carl, K-A-R-Y-L. I'm feeling like it's Carl, but
I would say Carol. I would put the Y in there.
Yeah?
I would say Carol. Yeah.
Okay, we can go with Carol. I'm down with that. Now, they also in the audiobook, I think I've mentioned this before, refer to Peter Baelish as Petar Baelish.
Yeah, they're just wrong on that
one. Right. Okay, we'll stick with Peter, and we'll go with Carol Vance. So Carol Vance is from Wayfarer's Rest, which you mentioned right before the chapter that had the duel between Bronn and Servardus Egan. You mentioned about the Vances, and they are the Vances of Wayfarer's Rest, not the Vances from Etranta. And Sir Roderick had mentioned to Cat in his report that the Vance house was sent to guard the pass below the Golden Tooth.
From the amassing Lannisters.
Yes.
Right.
And then we've got Mark Piper of Pink Maiden, which is the other house that you mentioned in that same chapter. They've got the naked lady on the shield.
I remembered.
And Mark Piper happens to be, as Ned puts it, a fast friend of Edmure Tully. But he's also, this Mark Piper is too young and hot-blooded for Ned's liking. So
Okay.
And then we've got the villagers from Shearer, Wendish Town, and Mummers Ford.
Right.
And they, several of them keep referring to Ned as Your Grace. They keep thinking that he's Robert,
the guy sitting on the Iron Throne who you've never seen before. On the side of caution. Call him Your Grace.
Yeah. That made me think of when Ser Jorah told Dany that the small folk really couldn't care who plays the Game of Thrones. Their lives they just want peace and a good crop and,
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
You think about that, actually. Think about the fact that Queen Elizabeth II, the current Queen of England, she's been on the throne for almost 70 years now. And in that time, I mean, basically, her face is now recognisably the face of, the monarch. But she's almost the first. I mean, like, before her, it was like people would go to the movies to see the news, We get these pictures of the monarch, but you wouldn't know it. I mean, he could walk past you and you wouldn't recognise him.
Oh, true.
She couldn't. She has been the Queen of England the whole time that modern communication has existed.
Right. Yeah. Good point. I like that.
No, that's not really a good point. It's just sort of just a comparison that prior to her, monarchs, real monarchs in our world would not have been recognisable to the small folk.
Good observation.
So the West is clearly a tinderbox since the whole Cat Tyrion thing. I mean, the armies are amassing at the the Lannisters in Golden Tooth, the Tullys beneath the Golden Tooth, ready to repel them if necessary. These villagers are reporting that, bands of armoured men have been burning, killing, raping the villagers.
I think it was in Shearer that they all went into the holdfast to get away from all the murdering and stuff. But the holdfast was made of wood, so they burn it down, and then the people who ran out to try and escape rather than be burnt to death, they shot with arrows. So yeah, it's a bad scene. But the one thing they weren't doing is stealing.
Right.
And that's a key point.
Yes, I mean, this could be a band of brigands who just happen to be taking advantage of the upcoming war to line their pockets. But if they don't steal anything, they're just troublemakers. And if they're troublemakers in the Riverlands, they are being sent by the Lannisters.
Sure does fit. The shoe sure does fit. So
yes,
that's what Ned asks. Is there any proof of this being a Lannister involvement? And there is no factual proof. There was no sigils. No banners. Nothing to say this was definitely the Lannisters. And Mark Piper says even the Lannisters are not stupid enough to do that.
But then let's just pause here for a second. What about the not stealing? I mean, do you want to trigger this war or not? If you want to trigger the war, go and destroy these villages dressed in your full regalia and let one person from each survive, If you don't want to trigger the war and you just want to, I don't know what, or if you want to really cover your tracks, steal.
Yeah.
Hide the fact that you are just causing trouble by stealing some things.
Yeah. I think Ned gets to his thoughts on why why Tywin Lannister did things the way he did things here in a few minutes. But yeah. But
we'll talk about that when we get there. But it wouldn't change what Edmure Tully does. If Edmure Tully knows without anyone telling him any of the details that this is the Lannisters, there's no question about it. But if the Lannisters don't want to get hauled to King's Landing to answer for their crimes, they could do more.
Yeah, they could act more like brigands, more like marauding thieves, troublemakers.
Exactly. And also not send the 8-foot tall guy.
That I have this in here to mention that. But they're armored in good armor. They're mounted on war horses, and their weaponry is too fine a steel weaponry to be just raiders. So that's another glaring omission, I guess they failed to take into account. But the major proof is the size of the giant-like leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's only one of those. He works for the Lannisters.
Yes.
He's murderous and horrible. It's him. Yeah, it's definitely him.
It does all fit. Unless you're Grand Maester Pycelle, it seems like it fits pretty well.
Right.
But there's a major disagreement between the eyewitnesses on the amount of the brigands that there were. The first guy says there was 100. At the same time, the second guy says there's 50. And the third woman says there were hundreds and hundreds. There's a whole army. And, that's just
eyewitnesses aren't very good at that kind of thing. Yeah.
No. That reminds me, that made me think of, it was just earlier this year, I think it was, Stacy and I were walking the dog on the main road up at the end of my subdivision. And all of a sudden, a car was coming across the road and 2 cars were coming down the road. And the car coming across the road either ran the red light, just forgot it was there, or thought they could get across before the cars got there. But that was a very poor calculation because there was a huge smash up right in front of us. And Stacy and I both independently thought we saw the car that was trying to cut across flip. However, the guy that was directly behind the car that hit that car trying to get across told the police, no, never flipped. No car flipped. Stacy and I were both like, but we saw the car flip. And he was like, no, didn't flip. I can tell you for a fact it didn't flip. And we were like, okay. So, eyewitnesses.
That is fascinating. That is fascinating.
Yeah, it was, yeah. So, eyewitnesses are not to necessarily be highly counted on, in my opinion.
Nope. Like uncorroborated confessions. That's another one.
Yes, right. But then Ned responds to this lady in a line that had me thinking about it for a while, what he meant. He says to her, you are more right than you know, good woman, when she says there were hundreds and hundreds, a whole army. And I'm guessing what he meant was that there were organized army, a deliberate organized attack. Like, it wasn't just a band of brigands, I guess is what he means by that? Is that what you took it to mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Without debate, that is what he meant.
So you picked up on what Ned was putting down a lot faster than I did.
Well, he just means that they are part of an army, no doubt about it. He knows who they are. So, it's who names Clegane? Who's the first to actually voice his name?
Mark Piper, the
that's Mark
young
Piper, right?
Hot-blooded, hot-tempered. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, plus it makes sense. I mean, they're about to launch a war against the Tullys. Why wouldn't they go raping and pillaging the villages? That's what you would do, you know?
Yeah. So Mark Piper says, definitely Gregor Clegane. And if that's true, it's quite the smoking gun that the Lannisters were involved, because Cleganes are Lannister bannermen. So it would be a rather bad look for the Lannisters. I'm not sure how much they really care, but feuding between noble houses is one thing, but slaughter of small folk is a different matter, I guess.
Yeah, it's an interesting combination of things, because they're hiding to a certain extent, but not completely.
Right.
They want enough evidence there that it's uncontestable who it is, but perhaps enough doubt that you could wriggle out of it.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's exactly what they were trying to do.
Yeah. The one person who doesn't see the evidence as overwhelming is Grand Maester Pycelle.
No, he sure doesn't.
Yeah, he keeps on questioning whether or not this is obviously the Lannisters, which it is.
Right.
But he keeps on throwing up roadblocks for, well, maybe not. Maybe it could be something else. And we've wondered, almost every time he comes up, we wonder about his motivations and his loyalties. And this seems to be revealing his true colours here to me.
Yeah.
For the first time. He's always been ambiguous, but this is not ambiguous. If you can't see this is not ambiguous at all.
Yeah.
You're a Lannister lackey.
But one thing about the whole reasoning behind Tywin's decision to do it this way, I was wondering if it was an oversight for him to send someone so distinguishable as Ser Gregor, which we were kind of mentioning either, or is he trying to send a message like, it was me, I know it was me, but you can't prove it was me. Yeah.
So Pycelle asks why an anointed knight would turn brigand, but that doesn't need explanation. See, that's the question where I was finally at my wit's end with Pycelle, or at least I would have been if I was Ned, because it's like, these aren't brigands. It's clear these are not brigands. If they were brigands, they'd be stealing. They're not stealing. They are just destroying because they are the vanguard of an advancing army.
Right. Yeah, and so at that point, some folks start slipping out of the back of the throne room, and Ned is thinking it's either one, to distance themselves from this discussion, say, I didn't partake in this at all,
right.
Or to run and tell Cersei of what they're hearing. Which
I
think
that's interesting.
I think the wording he uses is something like to nibble at the queen's cheese or something. Mice going to nibble at the queen's cheese or something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but she is not out of town. She didn't go on the hunt.
Right.
The last thing she wanted was to spend more time with her husband, so she's still around. So, yeah, she could actually be there listening to all this.
Yeah.
She isn't.
No, but she's going to find out, and I'd be very curious how she reacts. But he also notices when he's looking out and he sees the people kind of slipping away, he notices that Sansa and Septa Mordane are in attendance. And at first, he has like a flash of anger, and then he realizes, well, Septa Mordane couldn't have known that this wasn't just going to be the regular old fare of settling petty disputes and stuff. But it was a bad day for her to pick to show up.
Yes, it was pretty graphic. Yes,
pretty bad day all around for timing, because his first day sitting the Iron Throne and something this major comes up.
Yeah. So Peter Baelish asks why these towns weren't defended properly, and the reason is, of course, is that Edmure Tully had called the banners together to defend against invasion from the west. So they were all the knights who would normally be defending these towns in small numbers, but enough to actually put up a fight, were all called to defend the western frontier.
Yeah, the Vances and the Pipers were sent to the Golden Tooth, and the Derrys were sent to Riverrun. So nobody was where they needed to be at the time. So now Edmure is reassessing his plan here, and he's sending men to every town within a day's ride of the border. And Ned figures that Tywin Lannister might actually have realized that Edmure was going to do this, that this is kind of exactly what he was wanting Edmure to do, to spread his men thin, leaving Riverrun vulnerable.
Yeah, we've heard several times that Edmure is not up to much, and we've been a little bit sort of like we feel like maybe he's got a bad press with that. But when you're in a sort of war situation and you make one decision and then some action is taken and you completely invert that decision, that feels like you're not the puppet master, you're the puppet.
Right.
Because basically he's gone from let's draw everyone together, like go back to where you were,
Right. No, come back. Wait, no, go again. Yeah. Ned says Edmure is more gallant than he is wise, because he's tried to protect every single person in the Riverlands at the expense of protecting Riverrun. And like I said, Ned thinks that Tywin might be shrewd enough to know that that's exactly how Edmure is going to react.
And ruthless enough. I mean...
Right.
Edmure's behaviour is fairly understandable when people start coming and slaughtering your villagers,
Yes.
But do you have what it takes to go slaughter villagers just to win your side of the argument? Tywin does.
Apparently he does.
So Littlefinger follows up with, well, if the towns are now safe, what does anybody want from the crown here?
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. Right. They want justice for the towns that were destroyed and the murdered smallfolk. And Edmure, I think Mark Piper says this, that Edmure wants to pay the mountain back bloody coin for bloody coin, which, as we just mentioned, he's a young, inexperienced at war and politics and such things. But his father, Hoster Tully, is smart enough or has been around the game long enough and happens to be healthy enough, which is, something Kat was worried about, to know that if they attack without the crown's support, the Lannisters will claim the Tullys started it because there's no proof that the Lannisters did this. And as Ned puts it, the gods only know what Robert would believe.
Right, yeah. Yeah, because we've talked about this before. In lesser situations, we've seen Robert fail to have a backbone against Lannister pressure. And this would be a prime example of that. You've got no compelling evidence that the Lannisters started it. The Lannisters are telling you the Tully started it. He'll capitulate and agree with the Lannisters, I feel.
Yeah, just like he did with Arya and Joff. There was no way to know for sure who was telling the truth unless you just use common sense. And with Jaime and Ned... And it would possibly be the same situation here. But that made me wonder about the enormous financial debt that the crown owes to the Lannister. And could this be an example of why they're so willing to give so much money to the crown in case of a tie break? Tie break goes toward the people you have a huge financial debt to.
Absolutely. I actually think that Robert could stand up to Cersei and Jaime and Tywin if it weren't for the debt. He doesn't like Cersei enough to do what she wants.
Right.
He might capitulate just to shut her up, but he doesn't actually like her. And in this situation, he's fond of the Tullys. He doesn't like the Lannisters. He totally would side with the Tullys. Right. Even against what she wants. It's the debt. The debt underpins all of this. He cannot counter them because he owes them the crown, basically.
And he can't seem to stop spending either, so...
No. That's not help. I suppose once you're 6 million in debt, you're like,
what's 7 million?
Exactly. So Pycelle continues to bloviate. Even I thought he's trying to filibuster. He keeps on talking about the alternative theories, and I was just like, give it a rest. One of the things he says is that because Clegane is a Lannister, he's Tywin's man to censure. The censure should come from his liege lord, who would be Tywin Lannister. But of course, it's Tywin who's ordered him to do this.
Right. So imagine going to Tywin and be like, we want justice.
Yeah. Oh, come here. I'm going to take him in here and I'm going to spank him. just yell. So Ned says, well, but all justice flows from the king. So Pycelle counters with, well, let's wait for his return then. It's like,
right. And Ned says, Robert put me here to speak with his voice and act on his behalf, and I'm going to just do just that. But that did make me wonder, though, how Robert would have ruled in this situation. I know we were just talking about it, but, would he appreciate the challenge and excitement of the issue? Because he spent so much time telling Ned about how dreadfully boring these situations usually are. Or would he dread the real and hard realm ruling thing that needs to be done here?
Well, there you are. You've put the banana in front of me. Now I want to peel this banana. It is fascinating to think about that. You know what I think he would do? As you asked the question, I started to think about it. I think he would saddle up and ride there.
Oh.
And actually get in between them and say, disband, go your separate ways.
Maybe.
I want no more than 100 men in Golden Tooth. I want no more than 20 men on this road. Back to your castles.
I had not thought of that.
I think that's what he would do.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that would want to get out there, roll his sleeves up, and take charge of the situation.
Yeah.
I like that.
Again, as we do this, I mean, we have thought about this book more than we've thought about any book we've ever read, presumably. Yeah. I mean, unless you're, moonlighting on some other podcast.
That you don't know about. Yeah. I got this chair, I got this mic, I might as well use it.
The alternative realities that could come to pass are really fascinating in this book. Maybe just because of the complexity, these alternative realities. Because I'm sure something like that would have happened, and then the book takes it's like the butterfly effect.
Right.
If he happened to be here for this meeting, things would go very, very differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see, and in many ways, it's the perfect answer for him as well, because it allows him to maintain a certain neutrality. He can go up there and just say, I want this to stop,
right.
Be kingly and fairly neutral.
Yeah,
and reiterate when he gets there, I want this to stop and I want Tyrion Lannister freed.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, I've ordered Tyrion to be freed. This is over. I'm commanding it as your king.
Exactly.
Who's 6 million dragons in debt to this side.
Yeah. And 4 fish to this side.
Yeah. Sometimes when we do this conjecturing about how things would go, sometimes I wonder if our listeners are like, oh, this is interesting, or if they're like, man, these guys spend way too much time thinking about this.
Yeah, what they're thinking is, can you focus on what actually happened in the book and not what you think might have happened? I was writing this.
That's likely the actual answer.
So back to Pycelle. We noted earlier that he was very oblivious to the possible poisoning of Jon Arryn, and when it was put in front of him that he might have been poisoned, and that poison was a woman's weapon, he immediately said, well, what about Varys? It's also a eunuch's weapon.
Right.
Pycelle did share the Book of Lineages with Ned, which was part of Jon's investigation, but it's possible there that maybe Pycelle didn't know what the importance of that book was.
Yes.
He wasn't actually trying to help Ned, he just didn't understand why that mattered. Ned still doesn't, of course, but,
Right. Yeah, I had that same thought you did.
He voted to assassinate Daenerys. He approved the hands tourney in the face of the logic of not approving the hands tourney. He never sails against the wind.
Sure seems that way.
He goes with the flow, apart from today. Today he stands up because the Lannisters are on the block. And I'm just saying. He's
very solid observation.
He is a Lannister lackey, and never trust him again.
Well, yeah, you make a very compelling argument as to which side he's on, because all that makes a whole lot of sense right there. But so, like I said, Ned says Robert put me in charge. I'm here to rule with his voice. But he does agree with Pycelle that the king should be told. So he asks Robar Royce, whose father, Jon Royce, is off hunting with the king, to go ride off and inform the king of what's happening. And if you're still learning the names, if you're new to the story, and there are a lot of names and there are a lot of houses with a lot of people, so don't feel bad. Don't confuse this Royce with the Royces in the Eyrie with Cat and Liza. They didn't take a time machine and jump over to King's Landing this fast. The ones that are at Cat and Liza are Nestor Royce and his son Albar Royce. This Robar Royce, it doesn't help that all the names basically rhyme.
Yeah.
This Royce is Robar Royce. Now, he's the older brother to Waymar from way back in the prologue.
Waymar!
Yeah, he's the second son. His older brother, of course, is Andar Royce. So, we've got Royces all over the place. We've got them in the Night's Watch and King's Landing and the Vale.
Both Royces are from the Vale, right?
Yes, the
Both
Royce families are from the Vale.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they are related. It's just two different branches of the same family.
Absolutely, yes.
Right,
this branch here, Jon Royce, is the primary Royces in the Vale. They're the
Gotcha.
They're the Casterly Rock Lannisters, whereas Nestor and his son Albar are the Lannister.
That's right. You said that at the time. I remember that.
Yes. So, but he refers to Robar as seeing a familiar face, and I thought maybe it was because of the time that Ned spent in the Eyrie being fostered by Jon Arryn. But I looked it up, and Robar's 14 years younger than Ned, and Ned left the Eyrie as a teenager, so he couldn't have spent much time around Robar, so I'm not really sure why he refers to him as a familiar face.
Does he look like Jon?
Maybe he looks like his dad.
Or how old is the older brother? How old is Andar?
Andar?
Maybe.
I'm not sure how old Andar is, but he's older than Robar, so
yes,
maybe it's why.
Yes, yeah. Just a thought. So Mark Piper wants leave to take vengeance against Gregor Clegane, but Ned doesn't approve of this youthful cockiness and brashness. He never does. He never will.
Nope.
And he says, it's not justice. It's not vengeance I'm approving. It's justice. You going and burning fields and slaughtering their people won't restore the king's peace. The only thing that'll restore is your pride.
Right.
That's very Ned-like right there.
It is very Ned-like, yeah. And he tells the villagers that, unfortunately, he can't restore their crops or their homes, and he can't bring their dead back to life, but he can give them small justice here. And that's he brings up once again, this is the third time he's brought this up, that the first men believe that the judge who lays the sentence should swing the sword. He told this to Bran back in chapter 1. He told this to King Robert when Robert said that, Lady was to be killed. He said, you do it yourself. And he also brought it up with Dany. He said, do it yourself then, Robert. So he brings this up a lot. But he said, unfortunately, with my broken leg, he goes, you see, the thing is this. I got the Brad leg. So I'm just going to sit here.
Well, you mow the lawn.
Yeah. And that's when Sir Loras Tyrell shouts out that he would like the honor of acting in Ned's place. And at this point, Ned basically just ignores him. Doesn't even respond yet.
Yeah. Ned gives the duty to Beric Dondarrion. House Dondarrion is from Blackhaven in the Stormlands, and therefore they owe their allegiance to House Baratheon. Probably a good choice.
Yes.
To head up the task force to bring Clegane back to meet the King's justice.
You might remember back when Ned rode to go meet Gendry. He saw that knight coming in, and there was all the fanfare around him. That was Ser Beric Dondarrion.
Yeah. In addition, he sends Thoros of Myr. You'll recall he's a red priest of R'hllor, the main religion of Essos. We've heard that he was first over the walls at Pike in the battle that ended up with Theon Greyjoy being fostered at Winterfell.
The end of the Greyjoy Rebellion.
The end of the Greyjoy Rebellion, very much so. And he more recently won the melee at the Hands Tournament, in part due to his flaming sword. He's considered to be pretty mad, but he is obviously very dangerous.
Seems to be, yeah.
Yeah. He's a great friend to Robert, so again, unambiguous loyalty to the crown. The other knights he sends are Sir Gladden Wild, another Stormlander, again Baratheon loyalist, and Lord Lothar Mallory, a Crownlander, again Baratheon loyalist. So
I'm picking up on a theme here.
Although me too, yes, Ned has chosen the people he thinks will. I mean, I guess there's an even-handedness here because they're not Tullys, they're not Arryns, they're not Starks.
Right, yeah.
They are the King's people.
Right, yeah, it makes sense. Now, so this next one, I wanted you to read in your best Sean Bean voice, him passing down the sentence. I don't know if you're up to it, but I'd like to hear it.
Give it a try. I'm slightly influenced because I just saw him make this speech, but the words are slightly different.
Oh, okay.
I may stumble just a little bit, but in the name of Robert of the House Baratheon, the first of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm. He didn't do any of this, by the way. By Eddard of the House Stark, his hand, I charge you to ride to the Westerlands with all haste, to cross the Red Fork of the Trident under the King's flag, and there bring the King's justice to the false knight Gregor Clegane, Clegane, and to all those who share in his crimes.
I just got goosebumps.
I wanted the line where he says, "I denounce him and attaint him." That's awesome. I love that line. I denounce him and attaint him.
I did put that in the notes for what his punishment was, but I didn't know how long you'd want to go reading on for. So, so yeah, his punishment is he's denouncing him and attainting him, stripping him of all rank and titles, of all lands, incomes, holdings, and sentencing him to death. Which feels like the last one covers all the others, but.
So what's interesting to me about that is it's how do the crown and the liege lords work here? Because it feels like if the crown were to say, I strip him of his rank and titles, of his lands and incomes, if he's Tywin's man, Tywin could say, I give them all back to you.
I undo everything you just did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The last part, I don't think you can undo. The death.
So now this gets to what I mentioned way earlier about the Hound not being present. I'm very curious how he would react to all this. Now, obviously, there's not a ton of brotherly love between Sandor and Gregor Clegane, but when the Hound went and defended Loras Tyrell at the end of the joust, he never was on the offensive. He was just on protecting himself the whole time. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means anything. Maybe he just wasn't able to attack. I don't know, but I'm just curious how. And also, could Sandor be in line to be the next Lord of Clegane's Keep?
Yeah, I've got this vision of him getting more and more angry with the whole situation, like, sort of slowly drawing his sword out. And then when he hears the sentence, he's like, wait a minute. Someone's got to take the income from those lands.
Huh. You know what? This is not a bad idea now that I think about it.
Yeah. He's a monster. You know, see what he did to my face?
Have you seen my face? I mean, he's not a member of the King's Guard. He's just Joffrey's personal protector, so he could still hold lands and titles and all that jazz.
Right, and quit anytime he wants.
Theoretically.
Right.
So, yeah, just curious. I think it would have been an interesting dynamic had the Hound been there to see his reaction to it all.
If you want that to happen, write your own book.
Just definitely don't tell these different ideas to George Martin, because then he will start rewriting it and we will never get the last two books written.
So, by making the decisions that he's made then, Ned has dissed Ilyn Payne, who's the king's executioner, who we've met before. He's got no tongue and really scary looking, scared Sansa a lot.
Yeah, super freak
and
Sansa
Loras
out.
Tyrell. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Who didn't freak Sansa out. Sansa liked him a lot, but...
Yeah.
If Loras is smart, he might remember that when he defeated Gregor Clegane in the jousting, Gregor Clegane lost his temper, but for the intervention of the Hound, Loras would have been killed very, very easily.
Yes, and brutally, I'm guessing.
Exactly.
And you're not alone in that. Littlefinger tends to agree. He laughs and says, Sir Loras, if we sent you alone to handle this task, Sir Gregor would send you back with a plum in that pretty mouth of yours.
But Varys, after the sort of meeting sort of breaks down, Varys talks to Ned and says this was a tactical mistake. If you're going to make enemies of the Lannisters, you need to make friends with the Tyrells. The Tyrells are the second richest family in the kingdom.
Right.
But the thing is, do you see it as a slight? I mean, he was a little bit dismissive, but yeah,
it's a little slight. I wouldn't think it would be enough to sway the Tyrells one way or another if it came down to choosing sides. And he did tell, because Loras says, but Lord Hand, what about me? And Ned says that he's out for vengeance, and they're not looking for vengeance, they're looking for justice. So he did explain why he didn't choose him, but in his head he's thinking, the kid's 16, he looks basically Rob's age, so having a son that age, he probably also had a hard time including him in this group.
Well, that's good then. I mean, if he sends a raven to Highgarden and says, "Look, your son really wanted to go on this. I thought it was just too dangerous. Didn't want to get him embroiled in this.
Right.
That might build a bridge, but it also might have built a bridge to say, well, obviously the Tyrells are the most important family in this whole caper. Come along for the ride,
Sure. Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah. You definitely want to try and keep every family sweet that you can.
Yeah.
Because you're losing the Lannisters, and you're losing Grand Maester Pycelle.
I think he's long gone.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure about Ilyn Payne, though. I'm not sure what Varys means by that. I mean, Ilyn Payne would like to be the king's executioner, sure, but, I mean, they might bring Clegane back in chains,
Yeah. They'd be some really thick chains.
They'd have to be, yeah. Yeah.
In that case, he'd get to swing his king's justice all the same.
But what I didn't realise was that what Varys brings up is that Payne is by where he's from. He's a Lannister. He's under the Liannisters. That's
right, yeah.
He's lord.
The Payne's own fealty to the Lannisters, right?
Yeah. So Ned has clearly just decided he wants only one stripe on this trip, and that is Baratheon loyalists.
Yeah, I could see that. Makes sense.
Yeah, but it does leave the question of where will the Tyrells go if a war comes, and they could be extremely decisive, being the second wealthiest family.
Absolutely, yeah.
A lot of sway. All right, so to background for this whole thing, so the three towns that got mentioned were Sherrer and Mummer's Ford. They're both on the red... I know that sounded like two, but I'll get to the third one. They're both on the Red Fork of the Trident, which is the westernmost of the forks. Working upstream from the confluence which gives the Trident its name, the Red Fork runs roughly west. After more than 100 miles, it splits into two at Riverrun, the capital of the Riverlands, seek to House Tully. The Tumblestone continues west into the mountains, separating the Westerlands from the Riverlands. The Red Fork itself goes southwest into the same mountains, and bisecting those two rivers is the River Road, which runs to Golden Tooth, where the Lannisters are said to be amassing their forces. So just to give you a sort of geography lesson there.
Yeah, I like it.
The third town was Wendish Town. Now, when I was reading this, I just assumed all three of them were border towns, close to Golden Tooth. Made the most sense.
Yeah.
But Wendish Town is more than 200 miles from the other two. It's not far from the Blue Fork, which runs northwest towards, but not quite reaching, Seaguard on the west coast. It's both north and east of Riverrun.
Yeah.
So they rode around Riverrun to get to this place. I mean, that's a bold choice for, reaving you deep into Tully territory at that point.
Yeah.
Which, I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say before you say it.
You got to start with that one. Because you can't do that one last and then make your way back across the Riverlands.
No, but actually you can do that one last, I think, because the reason for doing this is to spread their forces thin. If you only do the ones on the border, they don't have to spread their forces as thin. If you show that you're willing to go deep into their territory, then they've got to spread their forces much, much thinner. So I think
yeah, definitely.
Strategically was the right move.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm thinking, if you did that one, if you started with Sherrer, Mummer's Ford, and then Wendish Town, you have to ride all the way back across the Riverlands to get to the Westerlands with a whole, like a angry hornet's nest of Riverlands folk.
Yeah. But I guess you're riding faster than the news.
Yeah, so. That's true. Yeah, that's true. They actually mention which one of them. They mention one of them. I think it's Shearer. In Shearer, their holdfast was made of stone, and they were going to smoke them out. But then Gregor Clegane says there's better killings up at the Mummer's Ford, and so they take off in that direction.
There you go, little pigs. Build out of stone.
That's right.
So, House Dondarrion gets a mention. It's got an interesting origin story, House Dondarrion. The First Lord was a messenger for the King of the Stormlands, and he was ambushed by two Dornishmen just as they were about to kill him. A fork of purple lightning split and killed both the Dornishmen. I gotta say, I don't believe this story, but hey, that's the origin story.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough pill to swallow right there. But hey, stranger things have happened.
Yeah. For his getting the message through, he was raised to a lordship, and as a result, his sigil was forked purple lightning on a black background with multiple 4-pointed stars. Their seat is Blackhaven, which is right in the southwest of the Stormlands, right on the border with Dawn. So they were often involved in skirmishes with Dawn.
Okay.
But they had purple lightning on their side. So.
And that's pretty cool. It's right up there with the Naked Lady sigil.
So, comparison with the television show, the scene is a bit abbreviated in the show, just a couple of peasants pleading their plight. No obvious knights of the Riverlands making the case, just the small folk themselves. The stories are similar, no specific towns get mentioned. Pycelle argues against Ned and logic. Ned sends Dondarrion and 100 men, but he doesn't name anyone else. So Loras Tyrell is not in the scene at all. One thing that's interesting, Beric Dondarrion will come up again in the show. This was a different actor. This is not the same actor. When I hear Beric Dondarrion, I picture the guy from the television show, and this was not him. This is an earlier incarnation.
Okay. Interesting.
Coincidentally,
fact.
the Mountain is another person who changed actor.
Right.
Additionally, as well as the denouncing and attainting, Ned calls that Tywin come to court within a fortnight or be branded an enemy of the crown.
Wow.
To answer for these charges. Yes.
Those are fighting words right there.
Right, yes. Pycelle was like, oh, the vapors. And Varys is not in the scene at all either. As Ned leaves the scene, it's Peter Baelish who's talking to him and saying, it's a pretty bold move you took there, my friend.
That is definitely a bold move right there.
Right. So yes, Tywin being dragged to court. That's a fairly big deviation right there.
Yeah, it is.
So Penetricona, I did put why Wendish Town when it's so far away from the other two, but then I think I've explained it to my own satisfaction. If you just did the border towns, they would just garrison the border towns.
Yep,
You've got to make the threat appear to be, we could come and do this wherever we want, whenever we want.
Yeah, I think that's pretty strong explanation.
No pedantry here, sorry.
So in news and notes, I discovered a bunch of comments on our YouTube videos. I'm telling you this right now live with everyone else. I didn't know they were there.
Our social media empire has got too large for us. We can't control it anymore.
I apologize to those who have left comments that I did respond to them today, but I was uploading this week's video that went live today, and I discovered, oh wait, there's a bunch of comments on some of these videos here. So there were some really good ones. One that I'll particularly mention is that the 3 men sworn to House Bracken that accompanied Cat and Tyrion to the Eyrie that died along the way were Larys, Mohor, and Curliket. And Martin has since confirmed their reference to Larry, Moe, and Curly of the Three Stooges. Ah,
yeah. The Three Stooges are really only famous in the United States.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And weirdly famous. Like everyone I ever met who went to college in the United States was like, oh, I love the Three Stooges. And you're like, really? Are you sure?
Yeah. Stacey is 100% in your camp, and I lean more toward you than I love them. But there's also...
It's a cultural thing. I get it. I mean, I don't understand cultural things. I mean, I Love Lucy means nothing to me. I have no idea.
But Benny Hill, on the other hand...
Again, that... I push 100% of the blame onto you people. Benny Hill was famous in England for 2 years, and then he just disappeared. And when I visited the United States as a 12-year-old, I was like, they've got Benny Hill on the television. What is that about? And when he died, Benny Hill was the 8th richest British person on the planet.
Wow.
Because of you guys. You made him rich.
I remember sitting with my grandparents watching Benny Hill as a little boy. And them laughing and laughing.
He was just an unfunny old pervert.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, looking back now from sort of like the woke 2020s to the sort of like benighted 1970s, he was just a dirty old man.
Well,
weird.
So another really nice thing I'll just read real quick from the same person is one of the comments said, just got caught up today, have read the books a few times, and finding these are really good summaries and discussions. So,
oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's really good stuff.
Yes, and we'll try and pay more attention to our social media outlets.
Yes.
See, Mackelly, you understand that in this relationship, yeah, I'm Robert, you are Ned.
Right.
Just to be clear.
That's how our text threads would look, that's for sure.
Exactly. I mean, if I could auto-reply with, I'm off hunting. All right, let's draw some conclusions here. So, the beat of the drums of war don't appear to be able to be stopped.
No.
And you brought this up. Robert here might have done a better job than Ned. Ned is so bound by his own codes to administer justice fairly and unfailingly.
Yep.
That he's adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah, that's very
Robert
very
himself
distinct possibility.
Could be diffusing the situation, but Ned can't.
Yeah, even at the cost of peace, he is going to seek justice unfailingly.
Yeah. So we're getting an inkling that the Lannisters might be slightly better strategic thinkers than the Tullys. Well, Edmure at least.
Yeah, and Hoster, who seems to be ailing, at least as far as Cat is concerned, he seems to be better suited to match strategic wits with Tywin. And also it appears he's well enough to overrule his son. So, maybe he's not as sick as Cat thought he was.
Yeah. But the Lannisters' cruelty and mercilessness contrasts with Edmure's concern for his small folk. And, again, that's to their strategic advantage, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Varys is probably right about the slide against the Paynes and the Tyrells. I mean, I really don't care about the Paynes. I mean...
He can't complain anyway.
Exactly.
Who's he going to take his complaint to?
2 words. Hand of the king, what? But the Tyrells, it's one that perhaps Ned should have thought through a little bit more. But again, you see, that's the thing. He's just so high bound by
honor.
But you see, that one's not honor. That's just a lack of strategic thought.
Yeah.
Unless he does what we said, which is send a raven straight to Highgarden to say, look, I really wanted to send him. He's a great kid, but Gregor Clegane is a lunatic, and he's got it in for him.
Oh yeah. Yeah, see, there's all kinds of justifications he could make if
exactly.
He just has to do it. Plus, I'm not sure Ned's the kind of guy that's gonna explain himself to someone.
Yeah. Plus, the other thing about that is you're building that bridge. That's the important thing. The thing that Varys wanted Ned to do here, you would achieve by doing this.
Yeah.
Building a bridge to the Tyrells.
Good point. All right. Shall we wrap it up?
Let's do it.
Well, as always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter @GhostHarrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and as I just remembered today, we're also on YouTube.
And as always, a plea for getting the word out. If you like what we're doing, if you could leave us a review on iTunes or Podchaser or wherever you listen, that would be a great way to help us.
Sure would.
Word of mouth boosts numbers more than anything else, and we would love to have more listeners.
Absolutely.
So, many thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.